Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. I hope you guys are having a great day. Let's talk about Palantir stock, because especially in the media today, what we have seen is some articles coming out about how insiders are starting to sell their Palantir shares. Now, what this typically does cause is a lot of speculation and concern, especially from the retail perspective and opinion, because the usual consensus is, why are these insiders selling? What's the information that they know that the public does not know, the retail investors? Now, with that being said, just because insiders are selling does not necessarily mean that's always a bad thing. And there can be a variety of reasons why insiders do want to sell. We're talking about directors, we're talking about large people in the companies. Why do they want to sell? It can be for personal reasons. It can be for raising actually financials for the company, or it could be for reasons, of course, that maybe things aren't going to be expected to be the best in the future. That is a possibility. I'm not disregarding that, but let's analyze insider selling and what's been happening, of course, with the reports. Of course, if you're new to the channel or if you're returning, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos, and of course, I'm not a financial advisor. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. Now let's pop it up on the screen right here. Palantir has been getting a lot of hype, a lot of traction recently, especially with the recent deals that we've seen, and we got quarter earnings that are going to be coming out in about a month, November 6th, 7th. Now, with Palantir closing at 1581, holding this consolidation at the $15 line, doing pretty well. We see it at 49 million in terms of trading volume and about 34 billion in terms of the market cap. Now, here's the article that we see right here that the insider sell, the director Alexander Moore, he sells 21,900 shares of Palantir Technologies, and this could be confusing, especially because we see that Palantir continuing to win over some big businesses, especially set to secure that National Health Service contract worth about 579 million. We talked about that in yesterday's video, and how tapping into the healthcare industry will help diversify what they're selling their AI products to, their clientele, because usually it's government contracts. And speaking about the government contracts, we had the Department of Defense contract that was last week. So big contracts are coming from Palantir, and especially continuing to blow here. And in terms of predictions, it is set as one of the best predictors for a growth stock in the next quarter. And especially where Palantir is right now, it's going to be facing this resistance line if it continues to grow. And what it needs to beat is basically this $20 resistance line, and then it could possibly have a breakout. So the question is, why are we seeing this insider trading? Now, if you go back to it, this Alexander Moore director here has actually sold a total of 201,000 shares and has actually made no purchases. And I think that does raise some questions that do need to be answered, especially as a key figure in Palantir serving as the director. His recent sell-off of shares has really sparked the interest among investors and market analysis, talking about the company itself. Do they know information, of course, that the public does not have complete information to? Now, if you look a little bit deeper into this, the actual insider transaction history of Palantir, this comes from gurufocus.com, basically shows a trend of more sells than buy over the past year. There have been 57 insider sells and 0 insider buys in total. That's kind of interesting that you see 57 sells and not one single purchase from an insider transaction. Now, this could be indicator of insider sentiment about the future of the company, and especially the stock was trading on the recent sell of $16 per share. Now, Palantir has really exploded. We have seen it up about 140% year over year. So profit taking possibly from some of these directors or on some of these insiders right here could be a possibility. However, one thing that does get me concerned a little bit is that 57 sell transactions versus 0 buys. There's been no zero continued buys, and especially with earnings coming up, it does raise just a few red flags. Now, Palantir, like I said, it's in the middle of this neckline right now. What we are seeing, especially if it does continue, is possibly a breakout, and we're seeing these resistance levels of $17 and $20, what we've seen before. Now, remember, if we kind of zoom back a little bit, last quarter before we had the earnings that were reported, Palantir went up to 20 bucks. And then when those earnings came out, Palantir immediately came back down to 15 right here. So could there be difference in the earnings that possibly these insiders do know compared to the expectations and the hype that we've seen with Palantir, especially, like I said, continuing to win over these big businesses and Palantir investing in those AI capabilities. Now, talking about that, and especially with these contracts that we are seeing with Palantir, is great. In terms of an overall predictor, Palantir is still doing very well. Now, it does have a GF score of 53, which does give a prediction on its long-term performance. But one thing that we do see with Palantir is its financial strength is very strong, and the cash on hand is pretty amazing compared to the amount of cash these other AI stocks have within the industry. So their cash balance is very high. They don't have a ton of debt, which is also very important. But one thing that Palantir does get the biggest criticism about is its actual financials and its actual, not financials, its actual price to earnings ratio and in terms of its valuation. And that's where the GF value here really brings down that overall GF score to 3 out of 10 just for the value. Now, what you're seeing here is a forward price to earnings ratio of 59.81. You see a lot of red bars here in the valuation because they are highly valued, and people are predicting, and especially trading off a lot of emotion right here, trading on taking the bet that Palantir is going to grow substantially as a company in terms of the momentum, because we've really seen great returns in terms of that 12-month momentum, especially year over year. However, the question is, can Palantir keep up with those valuations in the standards that it's being set to? And talking about those standards and leading into the next thing is, especially with those earnings per share revisions in the last 90 days, there's actually been 5 of those. So in the next upcoming quarter earnings right here, with those 5 earning per share revisions, will Palantir be able to achieve the standard that the Wall Street analysts have set them at? And if they can't, and possibly if they can't, especially as we see, like I said, directors starting to sell their Palantir stock, that could be a red flag, possibly that we could see a correction in Palantir's valuation. Now, I'm not necessarily saying, this is guaranteed going to happen, but it is a question to at least analyze, and at least I think to ask, especially when we are seeing insiders that are continuing to sell. But even with articles that are coming out here, especially Palantir versus C3.ai, Palantir is still a much more mature, number one, and stable company compared to some of these AI companies like C3.ai. So I still think Palantir as a company is still very strong, has a very strong basis. However, I think its valuation, and of course with the insider transactions in terms of all these sells, the 57 sells and 0 buys that we're seeing, is a question that does need to be discussed, and I think it does need to be answered from Palantir. It technically will be answered when those quarter earnings will be coming out. So I want to know your guys' opinion. Please let me know down in the comments. What do you think about these insider transactions with sells? Do you think it's because possibly they see a correction in Palantir coming in the future? Or do you think they could just be profit taking, especially if they had these shares at average costs at much lower prices, especially with last year, and trying to take advantage of the 140% year over year increase in valuation? It's all about it, you guys. Big things to discuss. We'll be keeping an eye on Palantir. Take care. Peace out. And I'll catch you guys later.